Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keefe on this Thursday morning. Nice to see the sun shining this morning as we continue to try to make it through the week. This is CivicCenterTV.com. You can also catch us on Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Listen to us on the radio if you're out and about, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM, The Biff. Also, we want to say thank you to the Keiko Harbor Police Department. They are our Facebook partner of the day. We will be streaming the Megacast live on their Facebook page as well. And we'll be speaking with the chief here in just a little bit. He is one of our first guests. I'll tell you what, Tyler, so much going on in the world right now. We have wildfires in the west. Now we have the hurricane in the south. We have social, racial injustice going on throughout the entire country in the middle of a pandemic.
It's been an interesting year, to say the least. Each month seems to have its new little twist to throw on top of everything else, and everything just kind of piles on. So, interesting times we're living in, to say the least.
Oh my gosh. I was so excited for 2020 on New Year's Eve. It was like, 2020. So cool.
New decade, we'll hit the reset button, we'll start fresh, Let's just have a good decade. Let's start it off strong. We started off strong.
It's never ending, but we are going to
strong reaction.
Right? And we are going to get through it. And how we are going to get through it is we are going to get through it together. And I will say, if anything comes out of this crazy, crazy time, it's that it does tend to bring issues to light that have gone unaddressed and forces us to address them, but also it's teaching us to be a community. And I think in this world, in this day and age, especially with social media and technology, we've kind of gotten away from the community aspect.
Yeah, I think that's something that's kind of gone to the wayside before the pandemic. And I think it's become more clear during what we've been through over the past 6 months or so, especially, but definitely over the course of this year. It's become more evident just how important the community is to each and every person's everyday life.
I don't know about you, but when I grew up, I'm from a small town in Ohio, and when I grew up, everyone raised everyone. So my dad was a single dad with 9 kids. That was fun, 1 bathroom. And so he worked 2 jobs to help support us, but everyone on that block helped raise us. If you got in trouble somewhere, by the time you made it home, my dad knew about it. And I think in today's day and age, we forgot about that. And this has definitely forced us to become a community again.
Yeah, we definitely have lost track of helping each other out. And I think that the times that we're in now have shown just how important that is for us to step up as a community for one another, no matter what our situation is.
And that's one of the things that we do try to do here on the Megacast is bring the community together. We do that by bringing you in-depth, long interviews with newsmakers across Oakland County and the state of Michigan. This Megacast grew out of the pandemic. I don't think anyone thought we'd still be in it at this point in time. Remember, in the beginning, it was 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah. Well,
flatten the curve, 2 weeks.
It's just a pandemic. These always last 2 weeks, right?
We're heading into 6 months, and we're still here. But one of our goals is to be able to bring you these interviews and the information that you need to help navigate that. And so here we are, still going strong. And so every day we like to start off the broadcast, the newscast, the radio cast, whatever you want to call it. We're a Megacast with an update on the overnight news headlines. So let's go ahead and do that. You can find these all on CivicCenterTV.com. Just click on coronavirus. We update them in the morning prior to coming into the studio. And of course, one of the things everyone is talking about, the DOJ wants COVID-19 data on Michigan nursing homes. The U.S. Department of Justice wants Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and 3 other states governed by Democrats turnover data released to nursing homes and COVID-19 deaths. The governor agreed to provide the information, but blasted the request, saying it's politics. Nursing homes and other long-term care facilities in Michigan have been hit hard by COVID-19. Over 8,100 residents have been infected. Over 2,000 have died, which is really about a third of the deaths related to COVID-19 in the state of Michigan have been related to these nursing homes and long-term facilities.
Yeah, and I can see the merits in requesting the information. The Department of Justice wants to make sure that the state probably wants to make sure that the state wasn't negligent in their treatment of nursing home patients, and the state provides that information because it is public information, and if it's requested, they're going to give it out. That being said, I can also kind of see the outrage from the governor's perspective, being that the states that were requested all have Democratic leadership, but considering that nursing homes have been one of the, if not the greatest hotbed for COVID-19 in this state during the course of the pandemic, you can't really blame them for asking for that information.
Yeah, we're going to have State Senator Jim Runestad on a little bit later in the show in the second hour. I'm interested to hear from him because he's been a huge supporter to try to get cameras in the nursing homes, yep. But he is a Democrat as well. So I'd be interested to see his take on this and his thoughts.
Senator Runestad's a Republican.
Oh, he is? Okay, yes. I'm sorry. I thought, well, what do I know?
It's okay.
You know, I did have my coffee, just not a Red Bull on top of the coffee. Okay, also making headlines. Today, the clock is ticking for some fall sports. Time is running out if there is going to be boys soccer, volleyball, and girls swimming this fall in Michigan. The Michigan High School Athletic Association needs approval from Governor Whitmer to allow the sports to proceed. 3 sports are permitted in the UP and northern lower Michigan. However, the rest of the state continues to play the waiting game. The MHSAA already has postponed the football season until the springtime. What's hard, these students have actually been practicing. And while swimming is deemed a low-risk sport, the pools have been closed. So how do you swim without the indoor pools to practice in, especially going into the winter months?
Yeah, you can prep and you can condition for swimming, but a sport like that you kind of have to do to keep up with it, to get your times down to a preferable spot, for coaches to gauge who should be swimming in the varsity races versus junior varsity races and so on. And the MHSAA, they had previously said they were going to make the decision on the rest of these fall sports by August 20th. Here we are a week later, and there still isn't a decision that's been made definitively for other fall sports that haven't been postponed, such as football, like volleyball, like soccer, like swimming. We're still waiting on that decision, and they're saying now maybe it's going to happen sometime this week. The clock is ticking, but the clock's been ticking.
Yeah, I think once we hit September, which is around the corner.
It's next week.
I mean, this is going to be really hard to navigate going further. You feel for these kids. It's such a hard time for everyone. Also on Civic Center TV, a little bit of good news, I guess. Oakland County announces grant program to support schools. Oakland County will launch a $28 million grant program today to help schools countywide in preparing for safe reopening amid the COVID-19 pandemic. That includes charter schools and public schools. This will bring the county's total support for schools to $30 million. Now, today, Oakland County has created 9 grant programs using federal CARES Act dollars to help small businesses, low-income residents, local governments, manufacturers making PPE, veterans, and renters. These schools need every single dollar that they can get during this time, because trying to manage a budget and the pandemic at the same time and dealing with how to educate the kids, they have a big task ahead of them.
Yeah, and I know these dollars are going toward programs and going toward things that these schools absolutely need right now that they maybe don't have the budgeting for, because they don't know what the future is going to look like just yet. The budget from the state of Michigan has not been finalized. The revenue estimating conference in the state of Michigan, they planned another one for the month of August to determine further what maybe cuts to our schools and other situations throughout the state. So these schools are still very much in financial limbo for what happens going forward with this year.
One of the last stories we want to talk about, Rona for Real campaign launched. You're a millennial, so this is kind of targeted for you, Tyler. I want to get your input on this. A business-backed group has launched a public awareness campaign to educate young people in Michigan about the seriousness of COVID-19. The multi-million-dollar campaign, which is being financially supported by the DTE Energy Foundation, as well as other companies, will include a website, billboards, advertisements, and merchandise. The efforts focus on a sunglass-wearing animated character named Rona, which is the nickname some people have given the coronavirus. Is this really going to help? And I'm sorry, I can't. Unless this becomes a huge fad, I don't see anyone buying merchandise.
No, neither do I. I don't think. I think this is a cute little effort, but it sounds like they created themselves a nice little Teletubby-esque character about the coronavirus, and I don't know that that's gonna catch on. It sounds like a hey, well, they mean well, nice effort kind of situation, but I don't know that that's really gonna make a big difference, if any at all.
I kind of feel like if they don't know by now, what's a billboard and an animated person going to help? But hey, the effort's out there.
Yeah, no, good on them.
Trying to do what they can do. So, by the way, that website, if anyone wants to go on and check it out, is Rona for Real, RONA, for real.com, just in case you're on the edge of your seats and you want to check that out. So you'll find all that information and more on civiccentertv.com, as well as information directly from the CDC, which yesterday there was a huge shakeup when they changed the recommendations regarding trying to get tested if you're asymptomatic. You'll find all the updated information on civiccentertv.com from the CDC resources, state of Michigan, Oakland County, which as you know, I check the Oakland County page each and every morning before I come in here, just to see what's going on throughout the county and what they're doing over there to help support the community. We want to go ahead and shift a little bit, because obviously one of the biggest stories in the news right now, and continues to be a big news, is policing in America. After the shooting in Wisconsin, more protest, more looting, and this it's sparked a big conversation, not only from George Floyd, but before that, but now afterwards, and this conversation is continuing on. Professional sports now walking away from the game and protest a racial injustice, and that is being felt and has to be felt in all of our communities, because this does trickle down into our local police department. So we want to go ahead now and bring in Chief John Fitzgerald from the Keegle Harbor Police Department. Chief, thanks for being with us on the Oakland County Megacast.
Morning, Ronnie, and good morning, Tyler.
So, Chief, you have 20 plus years in law enforcement. When you see these incidents, what is the first thing that goes through your heart and through your mind?
Through my heart and through my mind is that the proper justice system will be followed, that if people have done something wrong, they will be held accountable. If they've not done something wrong, that people will be patient enough to do things the right way. It's America. We have the right to protest and come out and have our voices heard. And the police, the police community, we have a obligation to make ourselves better, to get better training, to learn what we have to do right out here, and to listen to our constituents, our people, because we're here to serve them.
Is there pressure from you as a leader of a police department that when things like this happen, to get in front of the cameras and respond to the public without knowing the facts? Because with cell phones and with social media, misinformation can spread so quickly that it can be damaging as well.
I think you have to get out as soon as you have the facts, but you can't jump out in front without the proper facts, because if something turns up that you thought was something that happened and you're wrong, then it looks like you were trying to either lie about it, cover up something, misinform people. So you want to have the facts before you get out there. I'd like to say that I compliment Chief Craig in Detroit. He does a great job of being out there with things to inform people. And I try to do that in Keegle Harbor. If we have an incident, I try to let people know through our Facebook page what happened, so that they understand what the police department does. And like I said, we're here to serve them. We're not here to lord over them.
Yeah, I will say that's one thing about Chief Craig is he has a great relationship with the community as well as members of the media. When they had the incident a few weeks ago where the gentleman was shot and killed after firing shots at the police department things were getting out of hand because misinformation was spreading like wildfire through social media. And he was able to get that video out within a few hours of the incident. I understand. Kegel Harbor, you guys have do you have body cams at this time?
We do not have body cams right now. That's actually something we're looking into the acquisition of. We have cameras in our cars, and the officers have a microphone on their uniform that attaches to those cameras. But body cams is something we're looking into the acquisition of, and finding a way to pay for them.
Yeah, that's got to be hard because the conversation right now is about defunding police departments when you do need that additional equipment. I know that one of the big things with the body cameras is the storage of the video. You know, that's one of the costly parts, and how long do you store it for as well. So do you have a ballpark on what that would cost the department?
We've looked into things. We're waiting for a couple other actual proposals to us. It is expensive. It'd be a large portion of our budget, and prices have, for us, have gone up to, I think one of them was almost in the $40,000 range, which is, for a department this size, is giant. But like you said, storage is the other part. Paying for the storage, how are we going to store it, who's going to have access to it. Then on top of that, there's rights of privacy for the people that get filmed on your body cameras. When you have those on, you go into people's homes. Nobody has a right to see inside other people's homes on these cameras, but people file Freedom of Information Acts on police departments to get all this footage. So now you have to have somebody that has the time to redact people's faces, insides of people's homes. There's all kinds of information that has to be redacted out of that. And that's another expense and challenge with those. It very well could be well worth it to have it. And I know that with our police video cameras, the in-car video cameras, since we got them back in my days when I worked at Southfield Police Department, and having them here, they do a great job of holding the officers accountable, protecting the citizens, protecting the city of Kegel Harbor's liability itself. And the best thing I like to say in my 34 years of doing this, once we got the cameras, it actually proved the officers did the right thing in the vast majority of cases, even when people came in to make a complaint on them. And you could go back and review the video. And also, it upheld some complaints, but very few of them.
Chief John, Fitzgerald, Kegel Harbor Police Department, as you mentioned, you were with Southfield PD for so many years prior to coming to Kegel Harbor. What's the difference between policing the two communities? Southfield, obviously much larger, Kegel, a smaller community. What's the difference been like for you?
Big difference is the amount of staffing you have, but you're still dealing with people and their problems, and people calling us to be their problem solver in both cities. I think that to me and to the officers, it's important that we're just treating people like people. Everybody, I try and put myself in their position if I needed the help of the police department, empathetic with them. And, everybody's a person that has a problem, and if we can help, that's what we're trying to do. Sometimes we have to take enforcement action that's helping everybody else by us enforcing, and people aren't happy with that when we do it. When they get arrested, they get a ticket. But big city or small city, you still have to remember you're dealing with people and their emotions and their problems and what's going on in their life. And when they meet a police officer, if they call for the police, it's probably one of the most important times of their lives right then. And as an officer, you've been to so many of these runs back and forth, and you have to keep that in your mind that, you know what, you wear the uniform every day. You're used to it. You're used to the guys that you work with wearing the uniform. When you come to somebody's house, they're not used to having a police officer there. And try and remember that this is, no matter how big or small this call for us is, it is the most important thing to them right then.
Chief, right now a lot of kids are returning to school. This week has been the start of school in the West Bloomfield School District, which includes a couple of schools in Kegel Harbor. What are some of the challenges that presents from a public safety standpoint, returning kids to in-person learning especially in the situation now where in the elementary level in West Bloomfield, there are cohorted levels where there's going to be multiple instances of people bringing their kids and taking their kids from school throughout the day.
You've got it right. It's a change. All the other years it was drop off in the morning, pick up in the afternoon. Now they have a drop off and then a pickup, a little time in between, then another drop off, another pickup. We're going to be out there as much as we can, the same as we have in the past. We're out there to slow people down around the schools. We're doing patrols around the schools as the kids arrive and as they leave. Even though the school zone signs haven't changed, they're still posted for the original hours. Keep this in mind that we may have a police car in the center turn lane with the overheads flashing. There's a Michigan state law that when you approach an emergency vehicle with the flashing lights on it, you have to slow down to 10 miles an hour under the speed limit. Cass Lake Road in front of Roosevelt School is 35 miles an hour. Police cars out there with its lights on, you have to slow down to 25 miles an hour, which is coincidentally the same as the school speed zone speed limit. So when you see us out there, slow down. When you see kids out there, even if you don't see us, please slow down. And then we have Abbott School, which is actually in the city of Orchard Lake, but it's right on our border. We do a little extra patrol around there. Unfortunately, a couple people got tickets this morning. One of our officers was out there and very vigilant about traffic enforcement today. We don't want to write the tickets. We're not trying to hide behind billboards and be a speed trap on anybody. We're putting ourselves right out there in a marked car with the lights flashing. When you see that, please slow down. We just want to keep the kids safe out there. And we do have some extra challenges with the different hours this year. We were trying to work in conjunction with the schools, and they've got their hands full with how they have to handle their protocols. But we're trying to be there for them.
Chief John Fitzgerald with the Keiko Harbor Police Department. You kind of mentioned Orchard Lake and it being on the border. I think one of the good things that's about being a small department is there is so much cooperation between the area police departments. How important is it to have that relationship? I know you all have mutual aid where if you need it, the backup from the other communities is going to respond as well.
Yes, it's absolutely essential. And the thing is, we have great relationships with our community, our local police departments. We have the chiefs. We get together at least once or twice a week to meet and talk things over. All our officers know each other. We work well with West Bloomfield also. And, we don't have to invoke mutual aid because we're there to back each other up and help take care of each other. And we border each other, so we share a radio channel. We know what's going on, and we help each other out. It is essential that we work well together, and I think we really do.
Chief, just a couple more minutes here with you on the Oakland County Megacast. Just this morning, Detroit police officers were targeted in a drive-by shooting at Telegraph and 6 Mile. How worried are you during these times about officer safety? But on the backside of that, the talk is about from the community not feeling safe from police officers. What do you want the public to know on both sides of these issues?
Well, as far as us not being safe, we try and be vigilant every minute of our jobs. We understand there's a threat to us out there. And, people will spit out statistics and say, well, yours isn't the most dangerous job by statistics. A fisherman in the Bering Sea has a more dangerous job than certain construction workers. But aside from the U.S. military, we are the only job where people go out of their way to attempt to harm us or kill us. So we have to be vigilant and trained and ready for that. But still, once again, we can't treat everybody like they're trying to hurt us. Now, as far as the citizens, please remember, I don't know any officers that come to work hoping they get to hurt somebody or kill somebody. That's not what we're doing. We're coming to work trying to protect society, serve society. Unfortunately, with our job, the way the laws are, they give us an immense power, and we have to use it. If it has to be used, we have to be very careful and judicious about it and following the laws. Understand mistakes are made at times. People do the wrong thing, but people are people. And in every profession, you have people that shouldn't be in that profession. We're trying to weed them out here. We're trying to have the culture of you don't allow somebody that shouldn't be a police officer to wear a badge. Officers are looking out for that now. we're here to serve and we're here to protect. We're not here to hurt anybody. We want you to feel that you can call us. We want you to feel that if we pull you over, and I'll tell you what, if I get pulled over, and it's happened, I'm nervous myself. Not that I'm going to get hurt, but I'm just nervous because somebody with authority is coming up to my car. And I can understand somebody who's not a police officer, how much more nervous they are. But please remember, if you are asked to do something by a police officer and you think it's wrong, if you're being arrested and you go, I shouldn't be being arrested, don't fight them. If you're right, you're going to get to take them to court, and you very well could make some money on a civil suit, and nobody gets hurt that way. We don't want anybody hurt out here. We want cooperation. We want to keep the society safe. We want to do our job to serve the people as best we can. We've been given a huge power, and we want to use it right.
I'm glad to hear that you get nervous as well when a police officer comes up behind you, because I do too. Even if they're not pulling me over, I immediately check my speed and everything. You know what? You touched on one thing there, though. How hard is it to get rid of some of these problematic police officers? Because the union is a powerful ally of some of these people, and it makes it hard to fire them.
Well, the important thing is for the supervisors and command staff to do their job properly and document things in the proper way that it can be used to, if necessary, terminate someone from this employment. The biggest problem is when command staff and a chief doesn't do it right, that's when the union steps in and says, wait, it's like going to court on a court case, and the jury says, well, you know what? We're not going to find him guilty because you did something wrong in the way you presented the evidence or found the evidence. They have the rights that the union makes sure get enforced, and the arbitrators follow those same rules. I consider it like playing Monopoly. That there's a union contract and there's the laws. We have to follow the rules in order to make this all go right. And if we cross our T's and dot our I's when we have a problem officer, we can do a good job of getting rid of them. It's if we don't do our jobs as supervisors when we find out about a problem.
Chief John Fitzgerald with us on the Oakland County Megacast across our family of TV and radio stations. Just to update, Chief, on the pandemic response. We're now it's been a few weeks since we last spoke to you. Not much new in terms of laws that are in place, but compliance is always going to be something that the people are curious about. How have our businesses been doing? How have the people of Keego Harbor and those visiting been doing in terms of complying with the safety guidelines?
Well, a lot of people are confused of what guidelines are in place now. Our businesses are struggling, but you see on the doors of the restaurants and the stores that they have their mask signs. When I go into places, I've heard clerks and people ask people to put a mask on if they don't have one. Yesterday, I actually heard somebody, it wasn't in Keego Harbor, but I was in a business, and somebody came in without a mask, and they asked if he had a mask. He said, no, I don't. Well, can you please wait outside? I'll come out and help you out there in a minute. This is almost a voluntary thing that you have to play along and cooperate, because there's not enforcement around every corner and every store. And I look at it this way. Sometimes I don't feel like wearing a mask, but when I walk up to a store and a sign says you have to wear a mask to come in, do I want to put some 18-year-old store clerk in the position of having to come up and tell me that I have to put a mask on? I know they don't want to do it either. They don't want to have to step in and do that. So I just ask everybody to follow the rules as best you can. Somebody asks you to cooperate with the rules, don't make a fight out of it. Don't make an argument in a scene. Just do what you know you're supposed to do to get along in society. And that's the same thing with almost everything in society. If we just follow the rules and have respect for each other, things are going to go well. Now, for some of our businesses, I do worry about some, because even though they've reopened, like restaurants they're struggling even at full capacity. So I'm sure that some are still, even though they're open, they're at a reduced capacity is hurting their bottom line. And I hope we can keep all our businesses around.
Yeah, I wonder about that going into the winter months as well, because many have been able to extend their seating area outside to try to service more customers. But even in that, are you have you had to write any tickets to anyone or any businesses, or is that pretty much just the health department handling that side?
We have not written any tickets to anyone. We've actually had very little issue with it. And the last run I can think of that somebody even called us on about it, the person they were complaining about was working outside. It wasn't at a business, and that person didn't have to wear masks. So I know some people are very, very, very worried about the virus, and they want to be in a mask all the time. And that's what you have. That's how you take care of yourself. If you don't feel comfortable going out, then stay in. If you don't feel comfortable without a mask, wear your mask at all times. But there's times where other people don't have to wear a mask by this executive order, so don't be mad at them for not wearing a mask when they don't have to.
Chief Fitzgerald, always great having you here on the Oakland County Megacast. Anything you want to touch on to let the people of Keiko Harbor and the surrounding communities know before we let you go?
Well, just a reminder that school's back in session. Watch for the kids out there. The school times are not marked anymore properly because of the different cohorts coming and going from the school, but we'll be out there trying to keep them safe. Also, we got a couple more weeks left on the lake. It's not quite Labor Day yet. Remember the safety rules out there. Keep the speeds down around the other boats. No wake zones within 100 feet of swimmers, docks, anchored boats. We don't want to have any tragedies on the lake as school kicks in here and the summer's coming to an end. It's been a pretty safe summer on Cass Lake and Sylvan Lake for us. Let's finish on a strong note, and everybody have a good time. Enjoy the good weather while it's here, and have a great weekend.
We have had great weather this summer. Thank you so much, Chief Fitzgerald with the Keiko Harbor Police Department, for joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. We look forward to talking to you in a couple more weeks. Hopefully the nice weather continues and we can get a few more weeks out on the lake and enjoy that as well. Thank you to you and your department and all things that you do to help keep us safe in Keiko Harbor. We're going to take a quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast. And when we come back, we are going to talk politics. Oh, that word right now. You're listening and watching the Oakland County Megacast.
Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Park's COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
This may seem uncomfortable, but so is being hooked to an IV, sleeping in a hospital bed, and fighting for your life. When it comes to COVID-19, comfort is not as important as saving lives. Wearing a mask can greatly reduce the chance of spreading the virus. So mask up, Michigan, every time you leave home.
Oops, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Just a little technical mistake, but you know what the good thing is, if they were on the radio, they didn't know that. They didn't see it. So, hello, I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keith. You're listening and watching the Oakland County Megacast, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. We work to bring you the latest news surrounding COVID-19 and trying to survive this pandemic. You can watch and listen to us on civiccentertv.com, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Listen to us on the radio, and you can even catch the rebroadcasts throughout the afternoon, 89.3 Lakes FM and 88.1 FM The Beth. Today, too, we want to give a big shout out to the Keegle Harbor Police Department. They are our Facebook partner of the day, allowing us to stream this broadcast live to all of their friends and their followers in the city of Keegle Harbor and beyond. So we are working to get who was going to be our scheduled next guest to talk politics, but we're having a hard time connecting with him right now. So we are working to try to get you another guest. And this is, this stuff happens, Tyler.
Yep, things happen, and you know what? You just got to roll through it. But there's still plenty to talk about in the meantime. With so much going on in our community, so much going on in the world right now that definitely surrounds the pandemic. So we're working very hard to get our next guest, get another guest on in just a few minutes. So, but we'll continue to move forward and talk about the news of the day in the meantime.
Tyler, Tyler's a diehard sports fan.
I
am. For me, I'm like, who cares? I never watch a full game because I say, why spend 2.5 hours when I can catch it in 30-second highlights? It's kind of my thought process there. But we are seeing sports right now move beyond the game. And these players are now taking this time to have their voices heard, and they have a huge following, a big platform. And we're trying to get Woody Woodriffe with Fox 2 to be our go-in-between, our backup guest here as we try to fill this time. And I'm sure, as most people know, Woody's my husband, so I'm sorry, baby. That comes with the territory. But to see this play out, I will say, just a few years ago, what happened with taking a knee, there was such a different response than what we are actually seeing right now.
There is, and just 4 years ago, yesterday was the first time that Colin Kaepernick had taken a knee during the national anthem in an NFL football game. And 4 years later, and if you thought 4 years ago at that time, that 4 years later we were going to be seeing NBA playoff games happening in August, not only that, but see NBA players boycotting a playoff basketball game, multiple playoff basketball games, see Major League Baseball shut down their games for a day, and in the same spirit, over the same issues, you would be baffled in that moment, thinking that we're still going to be talking about these issues and have next to no resolution or moving the needle forward on these issues 4 years later.
So we do want to go ahead and bring in Woody right now. I know you're eager to get out on the golf course, so thank you for taking a few minutes, filling this time for us. But this was an important topic to talk about today, whether you were scheduled or not, because so many things are happening in the sports world. What is your take? What are your thoughts? And did you ever think you would see this day come that athletes would be able to walk away from the game in protest?
Well, first off, thank you for having me on. Second off, I have no problem really with what's going on because it's driven by the athletes. This is not something that owners are saying. This is not something that leagues are saying. This is something that athletes are doing. And you have to understand that for about athletes are in uniform for about 3 hours a day. The rest of the time they're plain clothes just like me and you, and they're dealing with these issues. So I really don't have a problem with basketball players or even football players like the Detroit Lions canceling a practice to make a statement. This is what they feel they have to do, and they're using their platform, and I applaud them for it.
They are using their platform in a profound way, and some people bring up a question in this situation, Woody, of how does this make an impact? How does this help things move forward? You're simply just canceling your games. You're taking away your platform, whatever the argument may be. Why are those arguments unproductive in this case when clearly these efforts are making an impact?
Well, you're right, Tyler. They are making an impact, and I feel that in order to make the change that you want, you have to keep this this idea and this movement, and whatever you want to call it, in the forefront. Don't put it on the back burner. This has to be in front so everyone sees it. There is no rest until something changes. There are no games until something changes. I mean, this is what's going on. I remember the 1964 AFL All-Star game it was supposed to be held in New Orleans, and the black players decided that they were not going to play because of the conditions that were going on. So they moved the game. So there are instances in history where players have enacted change, and this is just another one of those steps in history.
Woody Woodriffe, Fox 2 Sports, do you think the rest of the season's going to be canceled, or is this a one-day, two-day event?
You know what? That's the question. I really don't know if this is, going to continue. I think it would all depend on what actions are taken. I mean, right now, the players are in control of this. And, if they say, hey, look, you know what, we're not going to do it, then they're not going to do it. So, your thoughts of championships and, relaxing in front of a game. No, there's no relaxing until all of this gets settled. Let's be honest, because until the civil unrest gets settled, sports cannot exist. It can't. So, I don't know how long this is going to go. I don't know, what the ultimate resolution is. But for right now, it's in the players' hands, and they are making all the decisions.
Yeah, so is there any feedback from the owners and the coaches on this, and what's their take as to what's going on? Because honestly, at the end of the day, sports is a business just like so many other things.
Well, that is true. Sports is a business. And, I remember when players went on strike and they'd bring in replacement players. I mean, we all saw that the product was not the same. It wasn't what we, look at as NFL football or anything like that. So, I don't know if that's an option. I don't see that being an option. The main thing that I see is that until things get straightened out to the satisfaction of everyone, where there's at least a sense of, hey, we're moving forward towards this, then there will be no change. Because let's be honest, just in the time of, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen more police shootings. So, I don't understand how these continue in this climate, but the response from the players is what they want it to be. And I can't say that it's inappropriate or appropriate. It's what they want to do. So they're doing it.
And it seems too, Woody, like the leagues, particularly Major League Baseball and the NBA, are taking to that message also. Major League Baseball postponed most of their games yesterday after the NBA had decided to shut games down. The NBA was very supportive of all the players of multiple teams when they decided that they weren't going to play basketball yesterday, and in putting together a meeting to allow them to decide what to do with the future. How big of an impact are the league's support having in supporting this movement by the players?
Well, you mentioned the NBA, and they are the ones taking the lead in all of this. I mean, even from the start, getting guys in the bubble down in Orlando and then playing their games. NHL has taken a similar tack. But in the NBA, owners are behind this because they understand that the league is mostly made up of black players. Let's be honest. You can't have an NBA without black players. I don't know the numbers or the percentage, but it's a league that's run by the players. So the owners, I think they stand with the players because they understand that easily any one of those players could be in a situation like what's going on in a lot of cities around the country. So, I think that you have support there. NFL, we saw it with the Lions, where they did not go to practice on Tuesday. Matt Patricia was behind it 100%. He was proud of the way his team stepped up to make their feelings known in the whole situation with Mr. Blake getting shot in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So he also got positive feedback. He told the media yesterday from a lot of people around the league on what the Lions did. So, they're back at practice, of course, but they did use their platform to make a statement. Now, I think that the NBA may have picked up on a little bit of that and said, hey, you know what? We can just stop it right now. So that's what they did. And Major League Baseball, they followed suit by canceling a few games. This is something that I feel is still a fluid situation. So we don't have a definite answer on what players will do or what leagues will do. It's a moment by moment situation. So we just have to wait and see. It would, I don't know if it would be unfortunate to see a season canceled because, again, I'm not an NBA player. Now, covering the league, it would be difficult because then, games would stop and we'd be back to, dealing with the social issue aspect instead of the on-the-court aspect. But I'm coming to find out that you can't just ask these guys to shut up and dribble. I mean, they have a say and a stake in all of this, and they are making their feelings known.
As you mentioned, this is being spearheaded by the players, and we are seeing players of all races and all backgrounds come together to support this issue. Do you think that's going to help them in a team-building moment down the road and could make them stronger teammates?
It's already happened with the Detroit Lions. We were talking to their players yesterday, and the conversation was that it was good that everybody could speak and be educated on what's going on and how to speak about it and, those kinds of things. Because let's be honest, a lot of guys don't have the same experience that other guys may have on the same team, and they're maybe in a pattern where they're caught like, okay, how do I deal with this? How do I respond to it? How do I deal with other players who may be, dealing with this on a more personal level? So all the discussions, all the conversations are happening, and I think it is bringing the team closer. Now, will that, lead to success on the field when they get back on the field? I don't know. I mean, I'm still leery about that because in the NFL, there's been no preseason games, so you won't know what the product will be until they hit the field for game one. And, it may be sloppy football. I don't know. But in the meantime, that's the situation that we're in, and that's what's being presented to the players. There's no preseason, but yeah, I think instances like this will bring teams closer because now everyone understands what everyone else is feeling.
Woody, we were just 4 years ago was the first time that Colin Kaepernick had taken a knee in protest during the national anthem in an NFL football game. At that point, one of the strongest shows of support for social justice movements in professional sports. Just how much of an impact 4 years later has that moment and that gesture on a game-by-game basis by Colin Kaepernick had on the landscape of the sports world, particularly from the player's perspective?
Well, Tyler, I would think that Colin Kaepernick's statement from 4 years ago is resonating loudly today. And you have to think that Colin Kaepernick had it right with what he was doing, because now, as you can see, there's kneeling, there's all kinds of things. But you can also see how Colin Kaepernick's message got twisted by a lot of other people who've made it about the flag and made it about he was un-American and all of this kind of stuff, where the exact opposite was true. This guy was completely American, using his constitutional right to protest and using his platform in a way that got his message out. Now, did it cost him? Yes, it did, because he didn't play football ever again. It cost him big time. But 4 years later, we see that he was on the right side of this issue. So if you're looking at Colin Kaepernick, you better look at him and say, hey, you know what? You had it right the whole time.
Any chance he's going to come back to the league, do you think?
I don't know about that, Ronnie. NFL teams, I believe, have this is just my belief, my personal belief, that NFL teams have said, hey, you know what, we're not going to touch this guy because we don't want any of the other stuff that comes along with him to come in and disrupt our team. And the other stuff being all of the social issues. Now, as Colin Kaepernick did get signed by a team today, what would be the number one questions to him? It would be about social media. Would it be about him playing quarterback? Would it be about him, hey, the last time you were out, you were, a Super Bowl caliber quarterback with San Francisco under Jim Harbaugh. No, it would not be that. It would be all about social aspects. So a team may not want to do that. I think all teams don't want to do that. So they kind of silently blackballed him. I wish Colin could talk about this more and had not accepted, some kind of buyout where he couldn't talk about it. That we might have gotten maybe a little clearer explanation on what he's going to be doing moving forward. But, he has that condition above him, and the league, I don't think, is going to bring him back at all. So I think that Colin Kaepernick, as far as an NFL quarterback goes, is done. But Colin Kaepernick, as a spokesman for social justice with an NFL slant to it, could go a long way in maybe helping lead this thing, or be a spokesman or something like that.
Put social justice aside. Let's say they do play football. We'll put you on the spot here. Predictions for the Lions this year?
I don't have a prediction for the Lions this year because personally, I don't think that the season will be completed. I think this COVID-19 thing will work its way into the NFL bubbles somehow, and guys are going to be on that COVID-19 reserve list the way that we saw earlier in the season, and I think it's going to cost people games. Imagine if you're on the way to a playoff push, and all of a sudden your starting quarterback is on the COVID-19 reserve list. He's out for then the next 2 weeks. You lose your playoff position, and then you don't do anything for the rest of the season. How upset, how difficult, how up in arms would fans be over that?
So does that mean fantasy football is off the table for you this year?
Well, for me, yes. I'm not enrolled in fantasy football this year because, let's be honest, I think the situation is too difficult. If guys are on COVID-19 reserve lists, how do you select other players? I mean, look, you know what? Fantasy football is on the complete back burner here in the kitchen, okay? Right now, what's up front is dealing with the current situation of players dealing with social unrest and getting on the field that way. Everything else is just ancillary and a distraction.
Woody Woodriffe, Fox 2 Sports, thanks for being our backup champion of the day and coming to our rescue here on the Oakland County Megacast.
You're welcome. You have a wonderful weekend.
Go play golf. Woody Woodriffe, Fox 2 Sports. These players, I do think this is going to make them a better team. When they stand together on an issue, it helps build that relationship because, as Woody mentioned, a lot of times we don't have these conversations, or we have them, we don't have them in depth. And it seems like the Lions actually had the chance and the opportunity for players of different backgrounds and different races to sit down and understand what their teammates were going through. And when you can have that open and honest conversation, you can start to see things and understand issues. And at the end of the day, that could bring them together as a team, not only helping society by taking a stand in something that is so important as social justice, but also hopefully helping them on the field as well.
Yeah, what happens on the field, what happens on the court, the NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball, whatever the case may be, all pales in comparison to the social issues that are being continue to be worked through in our country. The situation in Kenosha, Wisconsin, the battle that these players are fighting along with other people in their community and in the greater society. And so these players banding together and saying, we're not playing games tonight, we're not playing games maybe for a while because there are bigger things at hand, and we're going to use our platform and say, look, if we're not taking care of these issues, what are we playing sports for? I think it's a great way. It's going to be great for them building a team, but it's also great for the direction of the league and of greater society. These players know now more than ever they have so much influence on younger people. They have so much influence on their specific NBA team communities. The Milwaukee Bucks standing up and saying, we're not going to play against the Orlando Magic after what happened in our state. We want to take today to do our part in battling these issues. Talk to the Attorney General of the state of Wisconsin. Make an open statement. the Orlando Magic join arms and say, okay, well, if they're not taking the court, we're going to go back to our locker room, see what happens. If we don't play ball, we don't play ball, we're with them. Having Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook from two separate teams talking together in between the locker rooms, and then ultimately their teams also decide they're not going to play basketball. Having Major League Baseball say, well, we've played a few games today, but considering what's going on across the sports world, we're going to join in solidarity, and we're not playing ball today. There are bigger things at hand and bigger conversations to be had than what's going on the baseball diamond. This is a huge turning point for the world of sports in terms of how they address social issues and work to make social change.
Yeah, as Woody mentioned, this was led by the players because they may play football, they may play baseball, they may be professional athletes, but when that's what they do for a living, it's not who they are. And too often, the color of their skin when they walk off that field does have an impact on their life and how people see them. So for them to be able to stand up and take this time, and I wonder too, would we be doing this, or would they even be able to do this had we not been in the middle of a pandemic and the craziness that is surrounding the entire sports season right now?
Probably not. Probably not, to be entirely honest, because especially in the case of the NBA, their season would have already been over by now. Certainly, they would have been able to have taken a stand on these issues on social media, in the local media, whatever the case may be, because they still have that influence. But there's so much greater of an influence when people are clamoring for sports, and they're watching these games, and they're waiting for Game 5 of the NBA playoffs between the Milwaukee Bucks and newly named Defensive Player of the Year Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Orlando Magic, a team that's scrappy and plays hard and maybe the 8th seed but can give the Bucks a run for their money. And these players say, well, these are important games that people are waiting for. People are watching this. If we don't go out on the floor, how much of an impact is that going to have on voicing these issues in our country? And certainly, it has had a major impact, and it is exactly what they were aiming for.
Good recovery there, Tyler.
Thank you.
And thank you to Woody Woodriffe for helping us out with that.
Yes.
But this is a timely conversation, an important conversation to have. In fact, this morning we were even talking about trying to have someone on to discuss this issue with us. And look, the universe provided for us. We're going to take a quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast. When we come back, we're going to shift to politics. You are listening and watching the Oakland County Megacast.
As rivals, we don't always see eye to eye.
Like who scored the best recruits?
Who's gonna be who?
And whether we wear green
or blue.
But one thing we can all agree on to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Wear a mask.
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 The ball's in your court, Michigan.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test. And now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs. Even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary, we've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you for joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keith. And this is the Megacast, where you can listen to us on the radio, you can watch us on TV, or you could catch us on social media as well. So we want to say thank you to the Keiko Harbor Police Department for being our Facebook partner of the day. So you can watch us live stream on their page, or you can head over to civiccentertv.com. We are live there as well. Birmingham Area Municipal Access. If you're driving around, catch us on the radio, 89.3 Lakes FM and 88.1 FM, The Biff. A lot going on in the world right now. This is just such a crazy time. But politics is so front and center in this pandemic. Mm-hmm. And we want to go ahead and talk to our state senator, Jim Runestad. He's with Michigan's 15th District. Thank you for being with us on the Oakland County Megacast.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us again, you're the 15th District. That's the Western Oakland County area. What area specifically do you cover?
Well, it starts on the east side in West Bloomfield and Novi. And then as you move towards the west, part of Northville, Lyon, South Lyon, Milford, White Lake, Commerce, Walled Lake, Orchard Lake, Wixom, Walled Lake. So it's quite a big area. So
that keeps you busy. I have to ask you, what's it like to be in politics during this time? It seems from the outside, as a citizen, it seems so divisive. Is it behind the scenes as well?
I think the public gets a misperception of the relationships that very commonly occur in just about any legislature, and that in public, in front of the cameras, there's a lot of partisan haggling, but the relationships among the two parties, in my experience, is very good. You treat people as individuals, and there's people in your side of the aisle that maybe you don't have as great a relationship with, and there's people on the other side of the aisle that you consider a very good friend. So it isn't this divisiveness within chambers that you sometimes see in public.
Senator Runestad with us, Michigan's 15th District Senator Jim Runestad. Currently, right now, a lot of issues are being worked on at the state level, including Michigan laws regarding police body cameras. You recently sponsored the latest law that is permitting those body cameras. Can you talk to us a little bit about the history of putting that law together and what this specific legislation covers in terms of body cameras?
Sure. I was working on this when I was in the back when I first got elected in 2015, and what I found was that there was many departments that actually had body cameras, but there was no policies or procedures in place as to how you handle this, what can be turned over to the public and what can't. Literally, there was testimony of some departments that would have this very sensitive tape. Sometimes you go into some compromised position. I remember Sheriff Bouchard saying that when he was an officer on the street, that he went in and this lady had slipped off of the toilet and was wedged between the toilet and the wall, and he had to extract her. And he said, if that was captured on body camera, how horrific it would be for her if that was released. And there was a lot of cases like that. In California, there was a blooper show that they were getting actually cameras and doing bloopers of an elderly person slipping and falling and how funny, and they were naked and how funny this all is. It was horrendous. And so there was the concern about when can the body cameras be on, when can they be off, who has access to this information. So we put provisions in place so that these videos have to be secured. Literally, there was a department that just threw these tapes in a box in order people could come by and get them. So it was the wild, wild west. So the bill that I eventually got through, I think it was unanimous, and it said that you have to securely store this. You have to store it for a period of time. I believe we settled on 45 days. If somebody requested a copy, then you had to retain it longer so that they couldn't dump this data and say, oh, we don't know what you're talking about. No, they had to retain it. Then on top of that, it gave people privacy protection that if you are in what's considered a private location, your home, your porch or something where you don't have an expectation that someone's going to burst on you with a camera, that that private information would be kept private if you're not subject to any criminal investigation. The police come up to interview you about something that happened in the neighborhood, and there you are with no clothes on. That thing cannot just willy-nilly be turned over to the public. There's cases we have heard of nosy neighbors that were trying to FOIA anything that went on with their neighbors, and with intrusive body cameras, that could mean all kinds of mischief that could occur. As I recall, we had almost universal support. The Police Officers Association wanted some changes that we simply couldn't make, but they really weren't even that objecting to it. In the final committee meeting, everybody said this is the best possible bill that could come out.
So we just spoke with the Keiko Harbor Police Chief, and I know for his department, they don't have them yet. It's a cost issue. Do you believe all departments should have these body cams? And if so, would there be funding to help support that measure?
They're accurate in their concern about the cost. These are very costly, not only to equip all of the officers with the camera, but the storage capacity is. So some of the departments, I guess West Bloomfield is looking at adding body cameras on all of their officers, but they've done the analysis and they can afford to make it happen. This leads us to another question I think we're going to get into, is that we're still looking at over $1 billion deficit next year. And if there's another lockdown, that deficit could explode. So right now, in terms of appropriating money from the legislature to cover these big costs for body cameras is just not hard. So it's got to be done by a department basis, depending on what they think they can afford.
Staying on the topic of cameras, you've been a huge supporter of trying to get cameras into nursing rooms, into the homes, or into the rooms. So where does that stand? I know the governor vetoed the latest bill, and why is this so important?
Well, the bill that I have been working on would permit the families to put a camera in the room of their loved one if their loved one wanted it and if the family wanted it. And what it would do is give them real-time monitoring of what's going on with that loved one. Especially with this pandemic, people can't even go in and see their loved ones. And it's just heartbreaking that they can't communicate with these loved ones. It literally could add a substantial amount of time to the life of a person who's isolated, alone, and maybe being abused. Versus making sure there's no abuse that is occurring, and that the family members can communicate their love and affection for this person on a minute-by-minute basis if they wanted to. Right now in the state of Michigan, the vast majority of nursing homes do not permit a camera. You're not allowed to have a camera. And when I went online, when I first was investigating this, I saw hundreds of videos of horrific abuse. In fact, I scrolled my phone trying to get to the end, and I couldn't get to the end. There was so many. There might have been thousands, as far as I know. I watched about 7 is the extent of what I could watch. Horrific beatings, people suffocating while staff were laughing. And then the staff said, oh, we were administering a CPR. They did nothing for this person. I don't think the average person could watch 3 of these videos, and they couldn't continue. It's so horrific. So right now in Michigan and other states that don't require the nursing home to put it in, the families are putting them in illegally. They hide them and they put them in order to see what's going on. But if they capture, it's often inadmissible. It's considered an illegal taping. So there's 5 states that require the nursing homes to allow these to go in. if there's permission from another person in the room. Anyone else, if there's another patient, they have to sign off. The patient has to want it. The nursing home industry was saying, well, why should we impose a camera on? No, there's no imposing. It would be paid for by the family, and the patient and the patient's advocates and family, they would have to want this. This is no imposition on the family. They would have to have this. And I think these horrible cases of abuse that we have been seeing, there was a national one of a COVID 20-year-old MML fighter put in with elderly patients. At least 2 of them, he beat them severely. One was captured on film. The poor gentleman, like 77 years old, eventually died from his injuries. It's just horrific if we don't get this done. So it is coming up for a vote in September. I believe it will pass unanimous out of the House. Out of the Senate, rather. It's going to go to, and it is going to be going through the same process. I hear that the chair of health policy is supportive of this. Then it will go to the full House. I believe it will be unanimous. It will then go to the governor, and I do believe the governor will sign. It would be so overwhelmingly popular among the populace. I don't see any equation where she does not sign this bill.
Yeah, I know advocates have been pushing for this long before the pandemic, and definitely has become a bigger issue as people have been unable to visit their loved ones in person. So not only for the safety standpoint of their loved ones, but from the mental aspect for them to be able to connect with one another. From my understanding right now, this is currently, it's up to the individual facility on whether they allow these cameras or not, correct?
That's correct, and virtually none of them do. I've heard of a small handful, literally, of nursing homes that will permit the family to put a camera in. All the rest of them bar the cameras.
Senator Jim Runestad with us from Michigan's 15th District on the Oakland County Megacast. Senator, in addition to the body camera law, you've also been a big proponent of Resolution G, which would allow Fourth Amendment electronic data rights which would allow Fourth Amendment rights to electronic data the same as it applies to paper documents. That looks like it's going to be on a November ballot proposal. Can you give us an update on that legislation?
Absolutely. Back when I was elected, some of these, this is what public center, how you have to sometimes work to get bills through. Even if it's a great bill, even if it's a great idea, even if it's unanimous, some of the stuff you have to do to work to get a bill through would blow the minds of the public. I started working on this in 2015, and basically I was hearing about different authorities, law enforcement departments that were using very intrusive equipment, sometimes military-grade equipment that doesn't have a fingerprint. You don't know who's using it, and there's no sign in like with a stone, and this stuff could gather all kinds of personal information. I read an article, it wasn't in Michigan, it was another state, but a department that proudly proclaimed they used this equipment 300 times without a warrant. That means you could have people checking up on old boyfriends and girlfriends and listening in on conversations. And so I felt that we need to be treating our electronic data the same as our personal papers when the Constitution was written. And there's been Supreme Court cases that have adjudicated these. There was one where police had tracking devices that were putting on without a warrant that went to the Supreme Court, and they said you can't do that. But you simply cannot adjudicate every single technology as it comes up all the way to the Supreme Court to vote unconstitutional. The people need to have their rights protected. So I put this in. It got unanimous through the House one time, with one lone no vote the next time, and died in the Senate. And you think, how did it die in the Senate? Who knows? Just all these work. It's something that's that popular. This time when I was in the Senate, I put it in and went unanimous through the Judiciary Committee, unanimous off the floor of the Senate, went over to the Judiciary Committee, or I went straight over to the floor of the House, and was unanimous, bipartisan. Every single person voted for this. It makes so much sense. So it is going to be potentially the only ballot proposal on the ballot in November, so that every one of your listeners is going to get to vote for this. I estimate it's going to pass by 80+%. That's typically past the other states or higher. So I'm very excited about this. We're not going to have to worry about some individuals violating our rights, claiming to have the governmental immunity to do that, and then us having to sue them, and just likely not going to make it through the process. Somebody has that kind of money typically. Now their rights are going to be protected. As of November 3rd, from that point on, I believe this is going to be the law, and people's privacy, their personal data, communications are going to be protected.
A lot to think about this upcoming election, a lot of issues to be on the ballot. Senator Jim Runestad with us, Michigan's 15th District. I have to ask, day 3 of the Republican National Convention in the books, your thoughts on how things are going, especially with this hybrid way of doing a convention, partially in person, partially virtual?
I think it was well done. I watched the vice president, and they social distanced. It was all outdoors, which the transmissions are much lower being outdoors. So I think that part of it was well done. I saw the president out there, and he was staying 6 feet away from people to make sure the social distancing was achieved. And if you're able to do that safely, it, in my mind, has so much more compelling a feel when you have an audience general response, as opposed to a Zoom where you can't get a feel how people are reacting to what's going on. So I think if you can safely do it, having the participation makes a huge difference.
Senator Jim Runestad with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Senator Jim Runestad, just a couple more minutes with you before we let you go. Anything else that you'd like to talk to your constituents about today, or anything else that we haven't touched on that you'd like to bring to our attention?
Yes. I think that there's going to be some of your listeners very aware of this. Michigan is considered the worst state in the nation for dyslexic students. It's a huge percentage of students, up to 20%, and it's typically around 20% of all students have some form of dyslexia. If you have dyslexia, you have a processing issue that is not going to allow you to do reading and a number of other academic activities the way a normal person does. You need a specialized system in order to help you. Most states test the kids right around 4th or 5th grade dyslexia and then do intensive intervention. Michigan does nothing, and it's probably why we're considered the worst in the nation on dyslexia, or one of the worst on early childhood reading, because we aren't looking at this extremely important issue to these children. And these children actually test higher IQ than average if you have dyslexia. So it's not an issue that they can't do the work, they're not getting the help. So we have a package of bills that's bipartisan. It's constantly, this kind of thing runs across the educational establishment that didn't learn how to deal with dyslexic kids. You have to learn to do phonics and how to teach phonics. There's a lot of resistance. They didn't learn it, so they don't want to learn it. They don't want to teach it. But if we don't get a handle on this, Michigan is going to drop further and further and further behind. So I would urge all your listeners to get in touch with their legislators and tell them to advocate for this dyslexia package. It will make a world of difference to the students, the parents, and also to the state of Michigan.
So have you had the opportunity to talk with any students or parents of dyslexic kids about how they're doing during the remote learning process?
Yes. I'm not going to say the kids, the parents. I've talked to so many parents. I have activists from all over the state that contact me about this issue. And it doesn't matter whether they're from the political spectrum or the left or the right. They love their kids. They know their kids have a problem. They know their kids are not getting any help. So it's extremely difficult if they don't have any help and they're not getting any. It's even more difficult for them. But we are going to ask for an appropriations to be able to do testing of the students and also intervention. That would mean testing all of the students in the state of Michigan. This is what other states do very effectively. They identify who has the problem. The intervention is what you need. This is something that can be afforded. There are so many ways we're working on solutions to make sure that this is successful. But there's oftentimes, as I was related earlier, something that makes all the sense in the world. You get resistance from individuals who just don't want to do the work, in essence. So I urge all your listeners that care about this issue, get on the phone and start talking to your legislators and say, this is something that's got to be done for these children in the state of Michigan.
Coming together to have their voices heard. By the way, before we let you go, I want to say congratulations. I understand you're a grandfather again.
Grandfather again, little Lily. Yes, we couldn't be more excited. I was actually, my daughter-in-law and son took us up to the beach with all the grandkids, so we had a great time. And then in October, just fairly recent, my daughter's going to be getting married, and so we're continuing to expand the population base here in the state of Michigan through the Runestad family.
Well, thank you so much. Everyone, stay healthy, stay safe, and we appreciate your time here on the Oakland County Megacast.
Always love coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Jim Runestad, Michigan's 15th district, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We're going to take a quick break here, and then when we come back, we are going to be shifting focus just a little bit and talking about an issue that is so important to so many people, the Restaurant and Lodging Association. These businesses are still struggling despite all the help that people have been trying to give them. You're listening to and watching the Oakland County Megacast.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards, back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart, keep wearing a mask in public, and if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus. Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/contain-COVID. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Here I am, Tyler, messing things up again.
Oh, no. It's okay.
I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keefe. This is the Oakland County Megacast, and I forgot to do our IDs at the top of the hour. I'm sorry. 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills, and of course you can catch us every day on CivicCenterTV.com. We also want to give a big shout out to the Keego Harbor Police Department for allowing us to be their Facebook partner of the day, where you can catch us streaming live on their page as well. They have a very popular page there in Keego Harbor. So we want to go ahead right now. This has been such a tough time for so many of our businesses. You know, they put their heart, their soul, and their life savings into some of these businesses, and then the pandemic comes along. They're forced to close down. When they can reopen, it's not at full capacity. It's a hard time to be a business owner in the state of Michigan and across the USA, frankly. And to talk a little bit more about this, we want to go ahead and bring in John McNamara, Vice President of Government Affairs, Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association. Thank you for being with us again on the Oakland County Megacast. We always get so much great information out of you when you do come on to speak. So how are your members doing? Tough time.
It's a tough time to run a business in the best of times. You know, your margins are thin, and you know right now it's even harder. But continuing to do better. Luckily, we've had a pretty good summer in terms of weather. So with the ability to expand outdoor seating and the weather cooperating, they're doing okay, far from great, but better than they were in March and April when they were completely shut down and you couldn't be outside.
John, what I really worry about for some of these businesses, the winter months, it's like you said, we've had a great summer, so they have been able to expand their seating, and I like to sit outside whenever I can. But when it comes winter here in Michigan and it's 0 degrees, I don't want to be outside, and that's going to be a big hit for them if they're not allowed to reopen.
It is, and we're hopeful by that point we'll see some increased capacity for indoor dining, and hopefully, we have even more control over this virus than we have before. But the hits just keep coming with college football being canceled. That's probably 120,000 extra people in Ann Arbor and probably an extra 80,000 people in East Lansing. Every other Saturday there for a while that they're just not going to get. And with MSU not bringing students back, there's a whole nother population of customers that just aren't going to be there.
Yeah, I think when we look at these decisions that are being made, we focus on the college, we focus on the students and the parents, but we forget about all the other businesses that rely on these sporting events and even festivals and fairs and things of that nature to keep their bottom line going. Yep. So what's next? Any new developments from your organization, and what are you telling your members right now?
So right now, obviously, both the state legislature and the federal government are back on summer recess. At the federal level, what we're working on right now is a second round of Paycheck Protection Program funding, which I think will probably happen the third or fourth week in September when they're back at work. There was talks of more stimulus checks, extended unemployment, and a larger COVID package at the federal level. However, the two sides just couldn't simply agree on what to do. However, they all agree that more paycheck protection funding is necessary. So hopefully we get that through. At the state level, there's a 3-bill package on limiting liability. 2 of the bills basically say if any business, including restaurants, are following current protocols, they're immune from a lawsuit. And the 3rd bill is an employee protection bill that says if your employee has to self-quarantine or has a COVID-related issue, you cannot cause them any undue in course. And hopefully there's a hearing on that coming up next week.
John McNamara with us, Vice President of Government Affairs at the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association on the Oakland County Megacast. And John, we previously have spoken to Dave Lorenz from Travel Michigan, who has said that the good weather obviously has had a great impact on the on Michigan's tourism industry as people are staying in state and traveling about the state instead of going out of state or overseas, whatever the case may be, for their summer travels. Has the increase in tourism within the state of Michigan been helpful, particularly for those lodging members of your organization, but also for the restaurants?
It's been helpful. Obviously, we're going to see it more in Region 6 and 8, so up north, where a lot of people in Michigan like to spend their summers. It's been better than had been forecasted, or better than people had thought before. But I mean, numbers are still down across the board. I mean, it's other than outside of Mackinac Island, which is seeing pretty consistent numbers. Numbers are still down in general.
Can we talk about employees for a little minute? I know it was really hard for a lot of the restaurants and these businesses to get employees coming back because they were making more money with the federal stimulus. But now that that's gone away, are they seeing the return of some of these employees? What does that side of the business look like?
They are, and President Trump did extend the unemployment to a lesser amount through executive order about 10 days ago. But right now, what we're still seeing is some employees saying, I'm going to wait it out and see. I think there's going to be a second stimulus. I think there's going to be a second round of federal unemployment, and they don't want to come back to work, only work maybe 2 to 3 weeks and then not have the time in the bank for unemployment. So it's an absolute problem, but I think it's going to start getting better now that I think it's pretty obvious that a massive COVID-4 package at the federal level is not going to occur.
John McNamara with us on the Oakland County Megacast. He is the Vice President of Government Affairs at the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association. So you talk about bringing those employees back, but with the bottom lines still down. Are those jobs going to be there if we're still going 5-6 more months down the road and the numbers in terms of business revenues are not increasing, or you're not getting that support for extra capacity, particularly in the restaurants at the state level?
No, I mean, if we go back, if we're still at 50% capacity indoors, in mid-October, when it probably will be too cold to consistently sit outside, it's going to be much harder on that. So hopefully by then we have that increased capacity. But I mean, right now, 75% of our restaurant members have predicted they will not be cash flow positive over the next 6 months. So no matter what, it's going to be a loss for them. So, at some point, hopefully, everyone is comfortable again to go out. It's safe to go out again. They're allowed to go out again.
Do you have a number on how many businesses in your organization have shut their doors during this time?
It's easily over 1,000 restaurants and probably closer to 2 at this point. When the full shutdown was effect, we were losing about 30 restaurants a day.
Wow, that's hard, and for those owners, they're going to feel the impact of that, for years to come. Let's talk a little bit about the mask mandate. We've been talking about this at great length. Now that seems like the health department is going out and starting to cite some of these businesses that aren't following the rules and regulations. What are your thoughts on that? And for the most part, how is it going?
So for the most part, it's going well. And, right now we keep telling people your mask is your cost of admission. If you want to go into a restaurant right now, it's what you have to do. You can take it off the second you sit down, and if you get up, you need to put it back on. For the most part, people are being compliant. The majority of our members were in favor of this because it gave them something to point to. They can say, hey, listen, we don't agree with it, but we need to stay open, so this is what you have to do. Are there some people who are rude and mean to staff who ask them to do it? Sure. But unfortunately, you have rude guests in every situation. And it got to the point where we provided a de-escalation webinar for our members and their staff, just to say, hey, these are some tactics you can use if someone is, being rude and refusing to put their mask on and being boisterous.
John McNamara with us. He is the Vice President of Government Affairs at the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association with us on the Oakland County Megacast. John, a few more minutes with you before we let you go. What do you see as the future for these restaurants and lodging, particularly in the state of Michigan where your organization covers? Do you see that if we are able to get out of this pandemic by the end of this year, that there could be some recovery in 2021, or are we going to continue to see significant struggles for these businesses going forward?
I think when a vaccine is established and people are more comfortable, the industry will come back. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to lose more bars, restaurants, hotels in that time period. But I'm hopeful that, by the middle of 2021, the vaccine's established, the numbers are down, the curve has been completely flattened, if not, destroyed. People will be confident to go out again. Restaurants were a vanguard of public health and public safety before this. No one wants to get anyone sick. And we did it then, and we've proven now it can be done very safely.
So what are your thoughts on the state naming some of these restaurants and these businesses when they do have a large outbreak, but they don't name every place? What are your thoughts about that? Because I could imagine that if you're a business owner, that's hard to come back from.
It's very hard to come back from. And, there are some misnomers out there about restaurants being super spreaders and, air conditioning units in restaurants spreading disease and everything. So, no one wants anything negative attached to the name of their business. But unfortunately, it's happening. Sometimes it's happening when it shouldn't and when the problem really wasn't at the restaurant.
John McNamara, before we let you go, what do you want people to know about what you guys are doing and how? Talk a little bit, about some of these bills. I would think if you're a restaurant, especially, these tend to be lower income jobs. If I have an employee who may or may not be sick, but you work on tips, that person probably doesn't want to say anything and they don't want to get tested because that could be 2 weeks of them not having a paycheck. So is there anything or any discussions in place to try to help support some of these workers if they do have to quarantine?
So, I mean, right now they still, for another at least 5 or 6 weeks, they still have additional federal unemployment coming at that point. And then I'm assuming when they get back in the fall, there'll be probably maybe another round of even smaller federal unemployment through the end of the year. But I mean, it is an ongoing discussion. This is obviously, no one's been through a pandemic before. So, I mean, it's an ongoing discussion, and it's a worthy discussion in order to protect employees and protect guests and protect other members of the teams where they work.
I know you had mentioned one of the bills would address lawsuits. How concerned are businesses about the potential of lawsuits if someone does sue them because they say that, they got COVID from their establishment, or from employees concerned about coming back for safety reasons?
They're very concerned. I would say for some of our members, it's one of the first things that they think about when they wake up, and one of the last things they think about before they go to bed is that they're just worried of, I'm doing everything I can to protect people. There's going to be things that happen that are out of my control, and I need to be protected. My business needs to be protected. So that's the point of this 3-bill package that we are hopeful we can move through the legislature and that Governor Whitmer will sign.
Are you aware of any such lawsuits being filed at this time?
At this time, no. This is more, looking to the future, looking forward, saying this likely will be a problem, and even if it's not, hopefully it's not. We need to have protections in place there, and this is something we're working on with the business community as a whole. The Michigan Chamber of Commerce, the Business Leaders for Michigan, Small Business Association. So, this is something that's being pushed by the business community as a whole.
John McNamara, Vice President of Government Affairs, Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association. Thank you so much for being with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We always appreciate you clearing your schedule to come on and talk with us and inform our listeners and viewers. Before we let you go, anything that we didn't touch on that you want to get out there?
I think we covered everything. Just, if you go out to a restaurant, be sure and wear your mask and realize that, those employees are doing everything they can to give you the best experience they can. But it's, times are tough right now.
Times are definitely tough. Support our local restaurants, our local businesses. They are what make our communities so unique. We're going to take a quick break here on the Oakland County Megacast. And when we come back, we are going to switch gears just a little bit. And Board of Education, we're going to be speaking with the president of the Michigan State Board of Education. Schools are starting back. Tough time to navigate the back-to-school plan. You're listening to and watching the Oakland County Megacast.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonay Khaldun. I'm the Chief Medical Executive for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The people who are at highest risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19 are the elderly and those with chronic medical conditions. That includes people with heart disease, diabetes, COPD, or those who have compromised immune systems. People who are in those categories should right now be staying at home as much as possible and not going out if it is not essential. If you fit into one of those categories, those are the things you should do. And if you have a family member who fits into one of those categories, you should be checking in on them and making sure they are following those guidelines. There's something everyone can do to protect the community from COVID-19.
This may seem uncomfortable, but so is being hooked to an IV, sleeping in a hospital bed, and fighting for your life. When it comes to COVID-19, comfort is not as important as saving lives. Wearing a mask can greatly reduce the chance of spreading the virus. So mask up, Michigan, every time you leave home.
Let's see if I can get this right this time, Ma.
There you go. Very nice.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dell alongside Tyler Keith. Each and every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, we work to bring you in-depth, long-form interviews with newsmakers in and around Oakland County and the state of Michigan as we continue to navigate COVID-19 and this ongoing pandemic. This broadcast started as a way to try to educate the public because, as we know, nearly 6 months into this, it's still changing every single day. The news is changing, the headlines are changing, and that makes trying to get to the other side of this especially hard. And I could not imagine being in education at this point in time. We want to bring in Dr. Casandra Ulbrich, president of the Michigan State Board of Education. Thank you for being with us on the Oakland County Megacast.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
I would imagine when you think you have a plan in place, some new information comes along and it has to change. How has that been for you and your organization?
Well, it's really the local school districts that are, I think, bearing the brunt of all of the changes that are happening on a constant basis and a regular basis. At the state level, we've been able to provide some policies and procedures that they can follow, but really it's what's happening at the local level. What do your numbers look like? What are your parents' expectations? What can you reasonably do safely within the school? So there's a lot changing, and it's all dependent on what happens with this pandemic. And as you know, there's no rhyme or reason sometimes to how things are ending up with the pandemic, and therefore things have to change constantly with our schools.
I worry about the kids that could be getting lost in the middle of all of this, because sometimes they're not as, they're just young. They're not as able to go with the flow of the changes each and every day. But so many of these kids rely on school. It's their safe place. It's where they get their food for the day. It's where they, they learn. So how much of that concern do you have for the kids in the state of Michigan?
That's a tremendous concern. I think everybody's worried about the kids that are not in the school on a regular basis every single day. There's no replacement really for face-to-face instruction, but you still have to do the best that you can do. And you have to do it in a way that is safe for everybody. So what a lot of our schools are doing is really trying to prioritize those kids who can't really learn as well in a virtual environment, and having some of them come back, whereas others that could learn in a virtual environment, like high school students, for example, would be able to do so. But it's a huge concern, because at the end of the day, you're right. It's not just about the learning that happens every day. It's about the social aspect that comes with it. So, for example, we are in the process right now. I just had a press conference with Senator Stabenow this week, because the USDA is refusing to extend some flexibilities with food distribution. This is going to have a huge impact on what schools can do and how they can feed the kids within their school districts. So these are the types of things that we have to take into consideration as well. It's not just about the learning that happens every day, although that's immensely important. It's about all of the other aspects that come with schooling as well.
Yeah, I think back in March when this first happened, there was a lot of support. People were coming together to try to figure out how to get through the next day and the next week. Food was a big issue, and we had teachers that were delivering food to their kids and making sure that they were eating and they were getting nutrition during this time. So as we go on, it seems politics is getting in the middle of that. Is it frustrating to try to navigate what's best for the kids and deal with the politics associated with all of this?
It's absolutely frustrating, because you don't just have you have the local level, you have the state level, and then you have the federal level. And there are different responsibilities with each, and there's also different criteria that you have to follow. When the pandemic first hit back in March, we were able to get a lot of flexibilities out of the federal government. The testing flexibility, for example, from the U.S. Department of Education. And like I said, the USDA was very flexible when it came to how we could feed students who were no longer coming to campus every single day. Some of those flexibilities are now coming to an end, very arbitrarily, really, simply because, the department that oversees them has made a decision, or they put an arbitrary deadline date in and are now refusing to extend some of those deadlines. So that's definitely a bone of contention, I think, with a lot of us, is just you have all of this happening right now. It's the fall. It should be a time when everyone's going back to school, and yet we're still trying to figure out all of these different ancillary issues related to public education.
Dr. Casandra Ulbrich with us. She's the president of the Michigan State Board of Education, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And you talk about providing those extra resources for students, particularly students in need in school environments. A lot of that comes down to funding for our schools, and with uncertainty in the state budget regarding what the per pupil cuts are going to be, a lot of that's looking toward state aid and federal aid, particularly from the CARES Act. And recently there's a bit of controversy in discrepancies between the interpretation of the CARES Act funding for schools on state level and from the U.S. Department of Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. Your thoughts on her unique interpretation of the federal CARES Act funding?
Well, I think the only discrepancy comes down to Secretary DeVos's interpretation of very plain language in the CARES Act. Everyone else seems to know what it says. So that is the reason that many states are now suing the U.S. Department of Education, Secretary DeVos specifically, because she tried to essentially change the formula on how you fund Title I schools in the state of Michigan. So just to give you a little bit of background, the CARES Act provided about $390 million to the state of Michigan for our local schools to help with additional costs related to the pandemic. And in the bill, it said that the funds, at least 90% of them, should be distributed based on Title I federal funding formula. This has been around for a long time. We all know what that formula is. Schools know what to expect. And as part of that funding formula, when funds go to local districts, they have to do a set aside for similar students, low income, needy students in their district who might attend private school. This has been around. They know that they have to do this, and it is not an issue. Secretary DeVos decided to change her interpretation of the funding formula and said that for the CARES Act, these schools would have to set aside funding for every student who attends private school within their district. And this would have resulted in millions of dollars being diverted from our local public schools into private schools, based simply on the fact that she decided that this is how the funding formula should work. Congress, both sides, both Democrats and Republicans, said that was never their intent. And now a Washington judge, a federal judge in Washington, has basically just put a hold on this. There's a little discussion on whether this just applies to the state of Washington or to the country as a whole. But the state of Michigan is part of a lawsuit against Secretary DeVos that has already gone through oral hearings. And we expect the same kind of decision for us as well. At the end of the day, the judge in Washington state basically said that this was, she was creating her own ambiguity within the language that really didn't exist.
So where do things stand now? If I'm a parent, I'm struggling with the decision of sending my kid back to the classroom, remote learning, getting them all the tools that they need to get them through this school year. What's your advice to those parents right now as the president of the State Board of Education?
So my advice would be work with your local school board, work with your local superintendent and your educators in your area, because they are working very hard to come up with learning plans to make sure that students are still getting access to education, but are doing it in a very safe manner. And as part of that, the legislature has passed a bill recently that was signed by the governor that waives some of the requirements at the state level, so that there is more flexibility in how schools can provide education. It doesn't all have to be face-to-face. There's no mandate like that in the state of Michigan at this point. The number of days, the number of hours are being waived as long as the content is still being delivered that would be equivalent to the number of days and the number of hours. And the attendance percentage, in the past, you had to have 75% attendance on a daily basis. Otherwise, your school aid fund could be impacted by that. That is now extended, so it's not necessarily a daily, but it requires some kind of interaction on a regular basis, weekly and both monthly. So there's a number of different flexibilities that have been written into the law to account for the pandemic, but it's still a local decision, and it's still something that you should be working with your local school boards, your local superintendent, and the educators in your community to determine what is in the best interest of your child based on what is going to be safe.
Dr. Casandra Ulbrich with us. She is the president of the Michigan State Board of Education. A big concern for the school districts at the highest levels has been their budgeting for the upcoming school year and into the future. There's a lot of uncertainty as the state legislatures continue to work on revenue estimations for the upcoming budget. What conversations are you having between the school districts and the State Board of Education, and between your organization and the state legislature to bridge those gaps and minimize any potential detrimental impact on our schools in this upcoming budget?
It's a tremendous concern. We did get some good news this week when the revenue estimating conference was held, and the results were that the budget is not as bad as anticipated, but still down in the school aid fund, no doubt about that. And we still need to look at what are the long-term effects. So the budget for next fiscal year may not be as bad as we thought it was going to be, but there's still going to be some long-term effects of what's been happening. So one of the things that we did, the State Board of Education, along with the state superintendent, called on the federal government, called on Congress, essentially to provide additional funding for states and for local school districts to help weather the storm of what's going to happen with the pandemic. They have done a very good job of trying to protect businesses and protect those who are finding themselves in unemployment, but there's a trickle-down effect as well, and it's going to hit our school districts and our local communities, and we are asking Congress to take that into consideration as well.
One of the things we get to do here on the Oakland County Megacast is speak with people at length. We have had the opportunity to talk with various superintendents throughout the Oakland County area. Almost every single one of them expressed frustration with the response from the state, the lack of guidance, as well as the delay in guidance. What's your response to that, and what's being done if this pandemic goes beyond this first semester and into 2021?
So I can imagine that there probably is a lot of frustration from the state level. One of the things that we saw was we really needed the state legislature to step up and to provide some flexibility, as I said, with hours, days, enrollment, et cetera. And it took a while for that to happen. In fact, it just happened a few weeks ago. It should have happened a few months ago. And so that's part of the issue. I mean, we certainly understand that as well. And I'm sure there's also questions that are sent to the Department of Education that may not get resolved as quickly as people would like. Completely understandable. However, I think we all have to remember that we are in very unprecedented times, and nobody expected anything like this to happen. But we have spent the summer basically working to try to make sure that come fall, we are ready for the school year, even in a time when we know that there's so many questions that we can't possibly answer, and nobody can at this point. And I apologize, I didn't. Can you repeat the second part of your question?
So you're prepared for the fall. You've addressed the fall. What is being done to address the issue if we go into 2021? Because they are saying this pandemic could last into next year as well.
That's a great question, and I don't think that anyone quite knows the answer to that at this point. Right now, what the legislature has done is created a bill that basically says every 30 days, the local school board has to come back and reevaluate their return to learn plans and then put them out for public comment as well. So essentially what this means is on a monthly basis, the community will have an opportunity to weigh in on the direction that the school is headed, but it also provides the local district the opportunity to reevaluate every 30 days. I will say, though, however, to please keep in mind that is that is a lot of work to do on every single month. So we're please give your local districts a little bit of leeway as they're trying to work their way through this. But the reality is none of us know what's going to happen with this pandemic. It's unfortunate we're in the position we are. And, on a personal level, I think that there are things that could have been done before that would have alleviated where we are right now. They weren't done. So now we have to pick up the pieces and try to move forward.
Dr. Casandra Ulbrich, she is the president of the Michigan State Board of Education. Dr. Ulbrich, just a couple more minutes with you before we let you go. Is there anything else that you'd like to touch on today that we haven't spoken about, or any other information that would be helpful for our students, our parents, our school districts to know?
So I would just, again, reiterate the fact that a lot of people are putting a lot of effort into doing the best they can to make sure that kids still have access to the resources that they need and the education that they need moving forward. Please communicate with your local school boards, communicate with your local superintendents, but also have a little bit of understanding that everyone's trying to figure this out together. We're in very unprecedented times. And I also want to say that I think our educators are really doing the best job that they can with what they have been presented with. And so I just kudos to everybody who's really putting in the effort to try to make this the best experience possible. But again, it's sad that we're in this situation, and it's particularly sad for our kids.
Do you think there's been anything positive that's come out of this that may be better going forward that you and the Board of Education could take forward?
Well, I think I don't know that I would say there's a whole lot of positives that have come out of a situation like this. But one of the things that I think has been very gratifying is just the recognition of how important public education really is, and everything that it provides for our families, for our communities, for our kids. And I think that was a recognition that was waning at some point. And I think people are starting to realize once again, this really is an important thing for us to invest in and to support.
Dr. Casandra Ulbrich, president of the Michigan State Board of Education, we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to speak with us here on the Oakland County Megacast. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you for all that you and your team does for the kids in the state of Michigan.
Thank you. I appreciate everything you guys are doing.
This is the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl alongside Tyler Keith. Hard decisions these educators are making on all levels. And as she said, from the local to, the state colleges and the federal government, we are having to work together as a team. And as someone who used to work for the government, I can tell you things typically don't move quickly. So for them to be able to pivot and get things done, and I know it's not fast enough for a lot of people, especially if you're looking at who's going to watch my kid tomorrow when I have to go to work. We understand that, but a lot of effort is being done on so many different levels to try to get these problems worked out.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, and tough situations require a lot of thinking and a lot of critical thinking and problem solving. That's typically not something that can be done by one person or one organization, and it's going to take a lot of community partnership. And that's something we talked about early on in the show, is how communities are coming back together more than ever before in the times that we're in and with the issues that we're dealing with. And that's the same thing at the state level and at the federal level. All of the powers that be, the organizations that be, are having to work together to solve a lot of complex problems in creative ways.
So we do want to remind you too, we try to make this easy for you because there's so much information to navigate. So if you head over to civiccentertv.com, we put information on here for everyone at home. Maybe you can just go to the home page or go to coronavirus, and you can click on the information if you want to reach out and read the latest guidelines from the CDC or from the local and the state government as well. So go over to civiccentertv.com. Plus, that's where you can get the latest information from the Megacast. If you weren't able to tune in for the entire show, you can listen to clips of the interviews as well as catch up on the latest headlines as well. So I'm Ronnie Dahl. We want to give a huge shout out, though, before we go to everyone that helps make this broadcast possible. Of course, CivicCenterTV.com, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff, and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. A lot of people doing a lot of work to try to get this Megacast on to bring you the information here locally in our own backyard. So it's a good resource for everyone here, not only just in Oakland County, but throughout the area, because that is the great thing about social media, is that you can watch us anywhere that you live. I had some people on my Facebook page. I think the one guy was from maybe Tennessee. And also a huge thank you to Keiko Harbor Police Department for allowing us to be their Facebook partner of the day. And thank you to Woody Woodriffe for being our last minute guest today to talk about sports. A lot going on in the sports world. Also a shout out to Larry, our Zoom producer, and Jake, who helps book all of the guests here for the Oakland County Megacast. For the Megacast, I'm Ronnie Dahl and Tyler Keith. Have a good day. Stay safe. Enjoy the weather. Winter will be here before you know it.